What an AI actually is. You have probably read a paragraph from an AI that felt completely authoritative, agreed with it, and found out days later that it was wrong. Invented, not merely mistaken. The strange part is that nothing in the paragraph warned you. It read exactly like the paragraphs that were true. That is the system working the way it was built to work. And understanding why means understanding what the thing actually is. A large language model does not store facts and hand them back. It is not a search engine reaching into a folder for your file. It was trained on hundreds of billions of words of human writing, and during that training it compressed the statistical relationships between words and sentences and ideas into billions of numerical weights. What it kept was not the information. It kept the shape of the information. When you ask it a question, it looks nothing up. It generates the most statistically plausible run of words that would follow what you typed, drawn from the patterns it absorbed. In the most literal sense, it is always guessing. Picture someone who has read every cookbook ever written and never once tasted food. They can describe a dish with total confidence, name the right ingredients, get the technique right, even predict what a critic would say about it. What they cannot do is tell you whether it tastes of anything, because tasting was never available to them. The model stands in the same place. It knows the shape of a correct answer. Whether any given answer is correct is not something it can check. The guess is usually good, because human writing is consistent enough that a compressed model of it lands on something useful most of the time. But it is a guess. And when it comes out wrong, nothing inside the machine catches it, because nothing inside the machine was ever built to. It was built to produce the next word, and then the next, and then the one after that. Before we go on, a small challenge to keep you paying attention. Somewhere in this script, there is a factual error, delivered with exactly the same confidence and authority as everything around it that happens to be true. One claim is invented, or stretched past what its source will support. See if you can catch it as it goes past, and tell me in the comments what you think it is. Everything else is real. One line is not. Confidence without knowledge. Every other tool you own tells you when it has failed. The bathroom scale that reads 0 with you standing on it. The car navigation that announces you have arrived while you sit outside a paddock, nowhere near the address. The output stops matching the world, and you know to stop trusting it. A language model gives you nothing like that. It gets things wrong with the same steady confidence it has when it gets them right, in the same clean sentences, at the same length. A true answer and an invented one arrive in identical packaging. The reason sits in how it was raised. It learned from human writing, and people writing with authority almost never stop to say they are unsure. They state things plainly and rarely hedge, all in the same confident register. That register is what authoritative text looks like, so that register is what the model learned to produce, whether or not there is anything solid behind it. Ask it something it cannot actually answer, and it has no way of noticing the gap. It has a way of producing the next most plausible word, and that process does not slow down at the border between what it knows and what it is inventing. It carries straight on. The answer comes out confident and well-formed because it is assembled from the same patterns as every confident, well-formed answer the model has ever seen. OpenAI's own researchers said as much in 2025. The training objective rewards producing an answer and gives nothing for admitting uncertainty, so the model optimizes for the answer. Ask it to confirm a citation that does not exist, and it will confirm the citation, not because it checked, but because agreement is the most likely thing to say after a request shaped like that. It is not trying to fool you. It has no concept of fooling anyone. It is handing back the output its training made most likely, and its training made confident invention more likely than an honest, "I am not sure." The doubt is real. The model has it. It was simply never given a way to show it. How it actually fails. In 2023, a New York lawyer stood in front of a federal judge and tried to explain why 6 of the cases he had cited in a filing did not exist. He had asked ChatGPT for supporting precedent. It gave him case names, courts, docket numbers, direct quotes, every part formatted exactly like real law. None of it was real. That is the clearest example of the first failure mode, confabulation, which is what happens when the model fills a gap with the most convincing material it can build. It was not lying. Lying needs a concept of the truth you are steering away from, and the model has none. It was pattern completing into ground where it had no facts, the way a person can misremember a scene from a book they read a decade ago and stake their reputation on being right. The model knew precisely what a legal citation looks like, Whether those particular cases had ever been decided was a question it had no means to ask. The second mode is contaminated training. The internet it learned from is thick with errors, myths, stale facts, and confident nonsense, and all of it went in without a filter for truth. A peer-reviewed study and a conspiracy forum are, to the model, both just text with patterns in them, weighted by how often those patterns turn up. So some of what it now states as fact is the internet's own mistakes, passed through so many processing steps that the bad source has vanished from view. The third mode arrives when you ask about something recent. The model's knowledge stops at a cutoff date and asked about anything after it. The model will often reconstruct a confident answer from how similar things looked in the past. Ask a model whose training ended last year who won a final played last month, and it may hand you a plausible name from an earlier season, stated with total assurance, not flagged as a guess, delivered as fact, built from the wrong year. The fourth mode is the uncomfortable one, because we did it deliberately. After the first round of training, these models were tuned using human feedback, and the people rating the answers preferred the confident, complete, helpful ones. Hedging scored badly, saying, "I cannot verify that scored badly." So the model learned that certainty gets rewarded and doubt gets marked down, and it learned that lesson well. The more carefully it was polished by human raters, the worse it became at ever admitting it did not know. The most refined version of the model, judged by the exact measures used to refine it, is also the one most determined to give you an answer, whether or not the answer is real. Why it is getting harder to catch. A few years ago, the mistakes were easy to spot. Mangled names, logic that fell apart halfway, sentences that lost the thread and never found it again. Anyone who knew the subject caught them on sight, because they were the kind of errors only a clumsy machine makes. Those days are gone, taken away by the same work that made these tools worth using. A model trained on more text with better architecture and more tuning writes output that is smoother, better organised and more convincingly formatted. Its errors inherited every one of those upgrades. A made-up legal citation now comes with the right formatting, a plausible case name, a real-sounding court, and a docket number in the correct style. A fabricated research paper arrives with a believable title, an author who could exist, a journal that genuinely does, and an abstract that reads like the field it claims to come from. Nothing on the surface tells you to look closer, and you are the one who has to look. Because when you paste its answer into your own work, you inherit its confidence and its errors in a single move, with nothing to tell you which is which. This is not hypothetical. In late 2025, reviewers at one of the most prestigious AI conferences in the world let more than 100 papers through with fabricated citations buried in them. The reviewers were not careless. They were reading references that could not be told apart from real ones, produced by a system that had studied enough genuine citations to reproduce the form perfectly. People are building detectors to catch this, and here is the trap in it. The skill it takes to write a hallucination convincing enough to slip past you is the same skill it takes to detect one. They are one capability pointed in opposite directions, a forger and the examiner who studies forgeries, each getting sharper by studying the other. The distance between making a convincing fake and catching it never closes. It holds its width and moves to a higher, harder level. The thing we actually built. For almost the entire history of tools, failure was loud. A calculator with a flat battery shows you nothing. A corrupted file refuses to open and says so plainly. The tool went quiet or through an error, and the silence itself was the warning. These models break without a sound. The output looks the same, whether what sits underneath it is accurate or invented. The same confidence and the same clean formatting either way, with no error state, no warning light, no moment where the tone shifts to tell you something has gone wrong. Earlier this year, a Deloitte report delivered to an Australian government department was found to be salted with citations to sources that did not exist. The firm ended up refunding part of its fee. Nobody had flagged the citations on the way through because there was nothing to flag. They looked like citations. The report looked like a report. The only way to find the rot was to go checking reference by reference. And until it became a story, nobody did. We built something extraordinarily good at sounding right, then asked it to be right, and acted surprised when those turned out to be different things with an invisible gap between them. The word hallucinate suggests a malfunction. There is nothing malfunctioning here. The machine is doing exactly what it was optimized to do, producing the most plausible next word, and then the next, until it has built something answer-shaped, and whether that shape matches reality was never part of the objective. None of that is a failing of the people who built it. They built what the objective asked for, and it turned out genuinely useful. The failing, if it is one, is in the distance between what we actually built and what we quietly decided it was, and in how fast we handed it our trust before we understood what we were handing it to. And that error I promised you at the start went past somewhere in the last few minutes, delivered as smoothly as everything true around it. If you think you caught it, name it in the comments and say how you would check. The incorrect fact is one we stated in our last video, the worst AI hallucinations ever. You should go back and watch it again, or if you have not seen it yet, press the link right here.